Hi guys, welcome back. Today we'll be comparing two different trunk liners from Michelin and 3W for a Tesla Model Y Juniper. This video is not sponsored, but I want to talk about some highlights, the good, the bad, the ugly, stuff that people don't ever talk about. I'm going to start by putting these in the sun for a little while so they can flatten out, and that should get rid of some of the smell too if there's any. Starting with the price, the Michelin is $59 and the 3W is almost double the price, $101 at the time of this review. Similarities, both of these liners are made from TPE material, non-toxic and odorless, and they're laser cut to minimize the gaps or imperfections. They both are rated for all weather protection. I did not notice any foreign smell in the car after I installed them. Quality, the Michelin is very basic. The material feels more rigid overall. The liner has a harder feel to it. It is a little bit thinner and lighter than the 3W. I'm not saying this in a bad way by any means. It's still a pretty thick liner. Doesn't look like it's going to break on me anytime soon. These things are minor, but it is a comparison, and little things like this can matter to some people, so I just need to mention it. But I will warn you when it comes to the important parts, and there's a couple. Speaking of harder material, the Michelin makes it much easier to clean without brushing off the dirt or using the air blower, because dirt will not stick to the harder surface. Not to mention that it has a simpler design pattern, which should help with the maintenance as well. The material on the Michelin does not show footprints as much, and by footprints I mean anything that I put on it, or tire prints. I carry my bikes in here sometimes, and if there's dirt stuck on it, I can just brush it or wipe it off with a wet towel. One more thing I will add is that the Michelin has these raised edges, and they're pretty tall, roughly about 20 millimeters tall, ensuring that anything that falls will stay inside of the perimeter. 3W is more expensive, so it feels more premium to the touch. The design is nicer and more complex in my opinion, and it is heavier. The material is softer and thicker, enough to notice when I install them. However, maintenance takes a little more time due to the softer surface of the material. Dirt tends to stick to the liner more. I find that it takes a little bit more time or a few more swipes to get the same amount of dirt or fur off of the 3W than the Michelin. And the 3W does show more footprints as well. I normally don't wash my trunk liners since I'm not stepping on them, so most of the time a simple wipe down with a wet towel is enough for both of these. But again, the 3W does take a little bit more effort to clean if I want it spotless like the Michelin. Let's talk about the fitment. This is important. I'll start with the Michelin. Installation on this is simple and quick. I don't need to fold the rear seats down to install it. Just lay it down flat and press down on the corners. Make sure nothing is lifting. And to access the sub-trunk, just fold the liner halfway. There's no folding line here, but I just fold or lift past the cover, then I'm able to access the sub-trunk just fine. This is a close-up look on how the Michelin liner fits in the trunk. From corner to corner is perfectly aligned. There's no random gaps that I can see. With that said, here's the part that I'm going to talk about that all of the reviewers out there are not talking about. It is this part here that overlaps the trunk seal. I don't know if this is a design flaw from Michelin, but let's see how much it overlaps first, and then I'll talk more about the disadvantage and also why it might be a good thing. This is the line where it should end, which is where the carpet is. So I'm going to measure the overlap part, looking roughly about 20 millimeters. So this is the downside. It is the aesthetic. It doesn't look right. It is sticking out. Some people don't like the way it looks, myself included, but it took a while for me to get used to. The other thing that I was thinking of, will it affect the opening and closing of the gate? The answer is no. I've had this for about 3 weeks now with constant use of the tailgate, and it has never affected the opening and the closing of the gate at all. So here's the inside view. As the trunk closes, it doesn't even touch. The part that overlaps is not raised, and it is very flat. Michelin does not have a stronger grip. There's about 10 millimeters of play, so it will slide if I pull it out. And here I'm pulling the liner out to see if it affects any performance, and that's about as far as it will slide out. We'll close it one more time. Again, no interference, no touching. So the anti-slip system on the Michelin, as mentioned, is not that strong. However, it doesn't slide out on its own unless I drag something heavy out of the liner. then it may or may not slide out. This is a minor issue, which is the least that I'm worried about, but I just need to bring it up. On the bright side, to a certain extent, I look at the overlap part as an additional protector of my trunk seal. So when I load something into the car, especially if it's heavy, I can rest the edge of the box on the trunk seal and not worry about it being scratched. 3W liner has a different setup. First, I need to put the rear seats down, and I'm going to make sure the liner is in line with the carpet and it does not overlap the trunk seal. And the reason is, on the other side of the liner, there is this extra sleeve here, or tab, that is going to be tucked underneath the rear seats when they fold up. And I think they use this to cover the exposed part of the carpet when the rear seats are down, and when the seats are up, it also adds additional security to prevent the liner from sliding. However, the gripping system on the 3W is very strong already. It's not going to slide out. The fitment on here is also very nice. I don't see any unnecessary gaps or crooked lines anywhere. With the design pattern and the fact that it does not overlap the trunk seal, aesthetically this has a nicer look and flatter bed, or flatter trunk overall. Things to note is, every time when I need to remove or install the liner, I need to bring the rear seats down. Otherwise it will be very tight, which will possibly overlap the trunk seal. There is a line here in the middle, making it easier to fold to get to the sub-trunk. There are channels throughout the liner that will trap dirt, sand, etc., but the edges are not raised as high as the Michelin. So at this point it is very subjective whether I want an overall flatter trunk with a 3W or a higher wall with the Michelin that potentially keeps the dirt within the liner better. So to wrap it up, the Michelin is cheaper, easier to clean. It has higher edges that potentially keeps the dirt, sand, etc. within the liner better. The only downside here is that it overlaps the trunk seal, which only affects the aesthetic of the car and not the performance in terms of opening and closing the tailgate. The 3W is more expensive. The material feels more premium. It fits better and has a stronger grip. Nicer design pattern on the liner and sits very flat in the trunk. So these are some differences and similarities I found after a few weeks of using them. Feel free to add some comments to what I might have missed in here. If you were to purchase one of these, which one would you go with? Other than that, be safe on the road. Talk to you guys next time.